So community management is a lot of different things, but looking at the strategic kind of impact it can have, creating a loyal and engaged group of followers, turning passive followers into active contributors or advocates for your mission, and using engagement to build brand trust and awareness. So it's not an easy tick box exercise, kind of doing community management. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of potential. And earlier, or last week, not earlier this week, it's Monday. Last week, I put a message out to the Social for Good team in Slack and said, who do you think is doing this really well in the purpose-driven space? And these are just some of the examples of what the team came back with, people that we think are really doing community management well, and they've got a really active, vibrant group of people engaging with each other as well as the brand on social. So these might be worth having a look at if you're looking for a bit of inspiration. And I'm very aware that these are all very large organisations, and we might have a lot of smaller organisations here as well, but it doesn't mean that you still can't do some great things depending on your budget and your ambition. So these four brands have already have always taken a kind of different approach to how they connect with their audiences. But one of the things I thought they do all share is a focus on values, on authenticity, and the engagement is meaningful. It's not kind of generic. So the RSPB, they have a community of nature lovers and conservation enthusiasts, and their content invites their audience to learn about wildlife and to get involved, but it also encourages people to share their own experiences. So the space that they create on social does feel like a place where followers get to be part of this kind of shared mission to protect the planet, which is really nice. Mind obviously focus on mental health, and through their socials they create a really kind of safe, supportive space. They provide resources they have conversations about mental health, they spark conversations between people, and what they're really good at is amplifying the voices of their supporters. So their followers don't just engage with the brand, but they're also engaging with each other. So you have this kind of community of shared understanding and support, which is a really nice place and obviously will attract other people. The British Museum, and there are many museums that could fall into this that I could have put on this slide that are really good at community management. But the British Museum kind of uses its social to bring history to life. They share engaging content about collections, and they encourage discussions among history enthusiasts. And this kind of approach, again, helps the audience to feel part of like a global community, that they all have shared values. They value learning, they value exploration into history. And Patagonia, which I'm sure everybody's aware of, is a fantastic example of a brand that goes beyond its products, and it's really focused on its mission. And they engage a community of outdoor enthusiasts as well as environmental advocates, and the content does inspire action. And I think this was a nice example because it not only kind of highlights sustainability and what they care about and brings like-minded people together, but through these shared values, they've created spaces where audiences feel seen, feel heard, and feel inspired to take action. And I think these are just some brands that show what good community management looks like for a purpose-driven organisation. It's a sense of belonging, something that's bigger than just the brand, and it's about building relationships between people and inspiring real-world impact, whether that's from a non-profit space or a sales space. If there's any brands that anyone here think do this particularly well, please do share them in the chat. Again, I think it'd be really good advice for other people. Somebody else trying to get in, I think. So before I go any further, as I said, those are really big brand examples that I shared there. And a lot of clients that we work with are really keen to do things on social media in terms of community management, but there are barriers and there are challenges. So we're going to launch a little poll. If you can pop your sandwich or cuppa down for a minute, we'd really love to know what are the challenges or perceived barriers for you in your organisation or with your clients, because I know we have some freelance marketers here as well. What is it that's stopping you doing the community management that you want? And hopefully you can tick all of them that you feel are relevant. And if it's other, if there's something else, please do pop it in the chat. It'd be really, really good to understand. Okay, so we've got half of you filled it in. Just wait for a few more. Okay, should we end it there, Lucy? Okay, let's see what everybody said. So 82% of you have said lack of time. That really, I really get that. And that's what we hear a lot from the clients that we work with. 24% of the volume of engagements. You've obviously got a lot of interaction going on, so it's hard to keep up with it all. Just one person not really knowing how to respond or handle some of the negativity or difficult conversations. Some of you at 41% said confidence, understanding what really makes a difference. Hopefully what I'm going to talk through next might help with that a little bit. There's also, for 3 of you, a lack of support. We do see that as well. Sometimes we speak to social media managers who are really keen to do more community management and they really see the value in it, but there just isn't that buy-in at director level. Again, maybe some of the things that I talk about at the end of this presentation might help to help kind of communicate the impact to them. And maybe it's not a part of the strategy. Okay, really interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I just need to remove that so I can see my screen. I've got so much going on one laptop. Right. So I'm going to step back from social media for a minute and talk about why people use social in the first place. Thinking about our audiences is kind of always one of the first places that we start with any project. So why are people using social media? What is it that they're looking for when they go online? And this is a little breakdown that we've put together based on the different kind of key demographic groups. What you can see across all generations is that keeping in touch with friends and family is one of the main reasons why people use social media. It's not a surprise. For Gen Z and millennials, it's also clear that social media is a habit. It's something that they use to pass the time, although I'd argue this is probably becoming increasingly true for all humans of any age. Maybe this resonates with you and why you use social personally. I think it's interesting to look at this because as marketers, we should always be mindful of why people use social, because we have to tap into that. They're not looking for content from brands necessarily, but what is it that they want from us? Or what they don't want, we know, is self-promotional content. And of course, social media was originally designed as a place for people to share their lives, to connect with other people. So I think it's unsurprising that people are getting a bit tired of that. And what they also don't want is too much advertising. And obviously social media has become monetized and there has to be advertising for them to function. But when you think about stats like this, like how are we supposed to make a positive impact for our organization or the clients that we represent? Because we need to promote ourselves and we need to make a measurable impact from social, or like why are we using it in the first place? So what people do want is they want brands to connect with them, and a significant percentage of people believe in social's power to do that. And we've got some more kind of data from Sprout Social, which if you're interested in looking at social data, Sprout is a really good resource. They've just released the 2025 index, so I'd recommend downloading that. It's really useful, useful insights to help give some context to what you're doing on social. So this data shows that people believe social media does several things well. It helps people stay connected. It unites people around shared values, introduces them to new people and even new perspectives and new ideas. So it shows that social platforms are for creating a sense of community, how powerful they are for that. And We also know people want brands on social to help them connect with other people, to learn new skills, to build community and not feel alone. So for purpose-driven brands, I think this is huge. It's a great opportunity to help people build meaningful relationships. And when customers feel connected to a brand, they're more likely to buy from them. They're more likely to recommend them to others, to remain loyal, and even to spend more money. So this highlights for me why investing in community management, it's not just about engagement, it's about driving real results for your organisation. And of course, I understand you have to have the capacity to do that. But this data in a nutshell says to me, audience doesn't necessarily equal community. No matter how brilliant your content is, your audiences are going to struggle to connect with you if they don't feel like you're a real person on the other side of the screen. And so that connecting with people, which you do through community management, is just as, if not more important than the content you post. I think it has to be balanced. So community management, it's the process of building, nurturing, actively engaging with audiences on social. And we think about community management in terms of reactive and proactive engagement. So I'm going to talk through what those mean. And when we got into the detail, we identified 26, give or take, tactics that can be used for reactive and proactive. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. Don't worry, you will get out before your lunch break's over. But I'm going to share 6 of our favourites just to give you a bit of a taster of what you can do on social. So let's start with how reactive and proactive work individually, and then we'll look at how they work together. So reactive engagement is all about listening and responding. So this is where you're replying to comments, answering questions, or responding to mentions or messages. It's super important. It shows your audience that you're listening, that their input matters to you, and that you're here to help. And then when people feel heard, they're more likely to further engage with your brand. So let's look at some examples. So here are 3 tactics that we've seen with reactive social media that we think are good. So the first one is just building trust through active listening and being responsive. So both of these examples show how responding thoughtfully and not just a kind of generic response really helps to build a stronger connection with your audience. So the example on the left with the NSPCC, they are responding to a question from someone in their audience. And you can see they're not just giving a generic response, they've acknowledged Nicola's name, they're also highlighting the work their team is doing, and they're inviting further feedback. So this says to me, they value the audience members' input, so it helps to create a sense of trust and openness. It's a great way to make people feel more connected to them as an organisation. And in the example on the right, the RNIB is addressing a question about accessibility terms. So what's great here is how detailed their response is. It's clear, it's informative, it answers the person's question really well. And the impact is, so if the person that had asked that question, they could have just given it a thumbs up to kind of acknowledge the answer. But because the RNIB have gone into such detail, I think the person genuinely appreciates the effort. So that just shows to me how it's strengthening the relationship again, and it shows the organisation genuinely cares about helping. The second tactic is about celebrating your supporters, so really making it all about them. This is a post that the John Muir Trust published a while back, highlighting the efforts of one of their supporters. Alison did some fundraising, raised over £2,000 by running in memory of her father. So the Trust, through their content, not only give her a shout out, but they share a photo of her, there's some detail about her contribution, and then they've been responsive. In the comments, she responds with her thanks. The Trust then follow up with another warm and encouraging reply. And this is just a little example of how a bit of back and forth underneath your content can show how you really value people's hard work, their support. It sparks further engagements in the comments. But celebrating your supporters like this, particularly for charities, makes them feel really recognised, makes people feel appreciated, and again, strengthens that connection with your brand. But I think for anybody new that's seeing this kind of content, it inspires other people to get involved because it shows the kind of impact that their efforts can have. So taking the time to not only highlight, but to engage around personal stories, I think it shows your audiences that their experiences really matter to you. And what I like about this example is I think this creates a lovely ripple effect that people will then feel inspired to share more, connect with others in the community, and build relationships that kind of extend beyond the brand. And my final example for reactive tactics is from Art Fund, who have been a lovely client of ours for many years. And this is about just embracing the fun. So just having, playful conversations with other accounts. And again, the museums in London do this really well. So this is about showcasing personality, creating kind of light-hearted, fun dialogue. This particular conversation starts with a tweet from the Brickworks Museum. Art Fund then jump in with a witty response. And from there, other accounts join in, and you end up with this really long thread full of humour, creativity. And it's something that shows your brand is approachable, it's human, and it's encouraging other people to get involved as well. And I think community management doesn't always have to be serious or goal oriented. You can get a lot of positives from just having fun with your audience and show off your personality. It creates great opportunities for organic engagement, makes you more relatable, more memorable, which in turn will help to strengthen your reputation, the perception of you by people on social. So let's have a look at proactive on the other side. So this is where you're planning strategic activities and you're taking the initiative. So with the proactive side of things, you're creating content and planning content ideas that are designed to spark engagement, maybe by starting a conversation, running a poll or asking a question. But it's also about reaching out beyond your own channels, often outside of your comfort zone, maybe by collaborating with other like-minded brands or just joining conversations outside of your social feeds with other organisations or individuals. And what this does, it helps your brand to be visible outside of your kind of core audience group. And then this can bring new people into your community. So here are some examples of how brands have done this well. One tactic is about tapping into shared values. I think this is a really nice example of proactive engagement. So the RSPB in this example, they've shared a post about the Gadwall. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If there are any duck lovers out there, please let me know if I haven't. And Art Fund have responded here with an interesting kind of thoughtful reply, but connecting it to art. So it's not this kind of tenuous link, it's a relevant comment. And by jumping into this, they're adding a bit of value, they're connecting the topic to the artwork, there's similar birds in there, but they're just tapping into shared values. So it kind of broadens the conversation, strengthens the relationship between those two brands potentially, but also invites other people to get involved. And the big takeaway from this is Art Fund haven't been tagged in this at all. They've just listened out or are following certain organisations where they think there might be a connection. So it's an easy way to get in front of new audiences that are likely to be receptive, because the followers of the RSPB are then likely to see Art Fund's comment. So it's great for increased visibility, and if the right people see it and like it, they're then likely to come and follow you. This second example, the tactics about prompting conversations. So this is an example from Drinkaware, again, who we worked with for several years and saw great results from doing some proactive community management. And it shows how just kind of simple, thoughtful engagement can bring real meaning in conversation. So Drinkaware here have crafted a question in their comment that invites the audience to share their personal tips for cutting back on or taking a break from drinking. Now, the tone of voice is really important here, and I've talked a lot about sounding human. And if you want to create a kind of safe space for people to interact and for people to share more personal things, which this example does, the tone of voice is really important. This has been done by Drinkware. It's quite light-hearted, it's a friendly tone, so it does, I think, create that safe space for people to share their experiences. And somebody's shared a tip, so it's a nice little moment of connection. But this not only strengthens relationship with Glowing Sober 23, but it's also encouraging other people to join the conversation. And more than that, I think this kind of proactive engagement shows that your content is interactive, it's inclusive. When you ask your audience for input, you're not just starting a conversation, but you're telling them your voice matters to us. So I think that's especially valuable for purpose-driven brands because it highlights the human side of your organisation. It shows that you're really interested in people and therefore inspires them to get involved more. And our final tactic for proactive engagement is about raising awareness of your why, sharing your mission. If anyone's seen the TED Talk by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, which I do bang on endlessly about, you'll know what I mean by this. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend a watch. And this is what a lot of the proactive community management we do for clients, this is where that sits. So it's about joining conversations outside of your channels. So with this example, by joining in or by engaging with Wild Moor's post about biodiversity loss, John Muir Trust kind of reinforce their shared mission. They position themselves as an active, like-minded organisation within that conversation. So like the last example, this allows them to tap into Wild Moor's audience, so they're increasing visibility for their own efforts and potentially strengthening their relationship with a complementary organisation. And of course, they're broadening their reach to getting that visibility, but because they're sharing their why, they're amplifying their message and their mission, and people are interested in your why. It's not about your services or products or what you do, it's about what's at the core of your organisation, what's the purpose. So there's often an example for that on social, an opportunity for that on social. And then love a Venn diagram we do at Social for Good. And we've got where the magic happens in the middle, of course. So where reactive and proactive overlap, this is where you can make the greatest impact, in our opinion. The integration here of those two kind of sets of tactics drives growth in followers and engagement, strengthens connections with people, and amplifies your impact. So combining these means you're not just acknowledging engagement or solving immediate issues, but you're building long-term relationships and getting in front of new people. And what I like about this is if you can get buy-in or find the time and capacity to do both of these sides of community management, you get this cycle going where the active listening that you're doing informs your proactive content because you're listening and learning about what people really want from you on social. And then the more proactive content that you're doing, the more people that should attract. And then the proactive outreach that you're doing, so joining conversations outside of your own social channels, therefore then invites engagement with those conversations, but also more engagement on your channels as people come to follow you. And so it goes on. And I think this cycle creates a really nice sustainable way to be growing community and keeping them engaged and strengthen those relationships with people and between people that ultimately help you to make a bigger impact with your brand or your cause. So practically, how do we make that happen? That's easier said than done. I'm sure you're all there's a lot that you'd love to do, but as social media managers, we know that you're time strapped. So to develop a community management strategy in terms of reactive, you need to be monitoring your channels daily or as consistently as you can if it's every other day, but you can't be responsive to people unless you're there and checking in on them. Ideally, you want to be acknowledging any interactions that you get. So comments that aren't questions could still be worth replying to. If people share something, it's nice to acknowledge that as well to make them feel heard. And learn from your community. I think if you take time and step back from all the busy stuff that we have to do as social media managers and keep learning about what your audience want, you can develop a lot of content that really hits the mark and will get more engagement from people and you'll be more memorable. So if you get a lot of inquiries or questions via social media, that might help you to develop either a bank of content or some FAQs or something that could help you in the long term. Or even, you know, creating a list of FAQs for your social media managers so they're always knowing what they can respond to or how to respond to certain questions. And of course, you need time to respond. So whether it's a kind of 15-minute section in the morning and again in the afternoon, or whether you're a much larger organisation and you have somebody doing this full time, it just needs to be appropriate for the amount of engagement that you're getting. But it's really important to have time. And often when we've worked on strategies, sometimes we're suggesting to scale back the content a little bit to allow, or content production to allow time for this and kind of see what the data is telling you about the impact you're making. Now, proactive community management is a bit more of a complicated beast. Firstly, you really need to define what your goal is for proactive community management. What do you want to achieve? Is it about increasing awareness of your organisation? Is it about building relationships with a particular target audience or subsection of your target audience? Could be about growing followers or making more impact on a particular social channel, attracting new partners or collaborators. Or it might be that you feel the reputation of your brand isn't where it should be and you need to build some trust and positive sentiment. So actually honing in on what's important for you will help you decide which tactics to follow. And then we need to decide on your platform. So each social network has a different vibe, and that vibe doesn't stay consistent. You know, we've seen lots of change in the last few years, and audiences use different channels in different ways. So if you want to reach and engage with other organisations, you might choose one network. If you want to engage with thought leaders on a particular topic, then maybe you're going to LinkedIn. But whatever it is that you want to achieve, you'll find certain channels will give you the opportunity for that. And then it's really about social listening. So how you're going to identify and understand which conversations you want to engage with. There are a lot of social listening tools out there. If you have the budget for it and the ambition, there are tools like Brand 24, Brandwatch, Sprout Social. They're not cheap, these kind of tools, but you can set up keyword searches and phrases so that you're finding the right conversations to join in proactively. Following hashtags or making lists of people on X, for example, so could be a good way to find the right people. And look at who's already supporting you, you know, or the people that your current community are following. What content are they sharing? Who are they engaging with? And that could be a really great place to start. And schedule time to be social. You know, you can't, I think if you don't schedule time for proactive comms, it just won't happen. You know, with the best will in the world, something else will take priority. So you do have to think about how you balance different tasks and activities within everything that you do on social to make space for it. We've seen with our clients time and again that it does work and we do see good results. So you can probably tell we're quite passionate about it. And I'm slightly aware that we're running out of time. So I'm just going to kind of whiz through the next bit, which is what's the impact of getting it right. Good community management builds trust and credibility. And I think trust is the foundation for positive relationships, whether you're seeking charity donations or it's a brand looking to retain customers. Trust is really important. Increases engagement rate. So encouraging people to comment, share and interact with your posts is obviously going to increase engagement, and then therefore that makes you more memorable and the algorithm will love you for it. Good community management drives follower growth. Mainly proactively, but reactive will attract new followers as well because they'll see that you're kind of actively participating in conversations. Good comms strengthens audience loyalty. People feel like valued members of your community. And then that in turn can enhance brand advocacy. So if you have a strong community, that inspires your audience to advocate for your cause or your brand. They'll share your content, promote your mission, recommend you to other people. It also gives you really good insights. You really do get a good sense of what your audience care about, what challenges they face, the type of content they want from you. So I think that really feeds back into your strategic decision making. And we've often seen that this leads to good collaborative opportunities when you're engaging with other organisations out there proactively. We've seen some great partnership content come from it. And finally, if you've got a strong community, they become a really powerful amplifier for your mission. And as a purpose-driven organisation, that's what you want people to be engaging with, like getting behind what it is you're trying to do in the world. So before I wrap up, just wanted to share that community management is not the be-all and end-all. It's an important element of social, I think, but it's just one element of social. And yes, it can help maximise your impact, but it relates and is impacted by so many other areas, by your audiences, your choice of channels, even your reporting and your content strategy. And to kind of help work out how to understand the impact that social's making for you, we developed the Social for Good Impact Wheel last year. It's a free tool. We'll send you a link to it after the webinar, probably tomorrow morning. And it can just help give you kind of holistic view of the impact you're making from social. You will need 10-15 minutes. There's quite a lot of questions, but it would be, if it's going to be something that you want to do more of in terms of community management, I'd recommend having a look at this to kind of help you prioritise, and you get a tailored report at the end of it. And finally, before I hand over to you for questions, everything that I've covered today is a taster of what we do on the Social for Good Accelerator. We're going to be doing several more of these webinars in 2025. Lucy and I have been working for months putting together this amazing training programme. It's an 8-week training programme. It's aimed for social media, marketing and comms professionals and charities, so it's not relevant to everyone here if you're not a charity, but it was designed by us with charities for charities. And there's some live calls, there's some self-paced modules, there's a great workbook. You learn everything from channel deep dives to employee advocacy to influencer management, content paid, everything to do with social. And we've got some really good feedback from the first cohort that we've worked with. So if today was interesting as a taster, please do have a look at the accelerator if you want to learn more. But I'll stop talking now, and we've got a few minutes left to hear any questions that you may have, any thoughts or any experiences that you'd like to share with the group. I will just stop sharing my screen. I feel out of breath talking for so long. Right, Hannah, you have your hand raised.
Hi, thank you. That was really interesting. I popped on a little bit late, so sorry if I missed anything that pertains to my question. I work for the UK office of an international humanitarian organisation, an NGO. We have people who work in conflict zones. Some of those conflicts, particularly quite recently, are highly controversial. This has driven up our numbers of comments and particularly difficult to deal with comments. We're also so sorry, something just fell off the top of my washing machine, which was on, and it scared both me and my dog. Sorry, we also are increasing the amount of spend we put behind social media paid campaigns for fundraising purposes, which also increases the number of comments and also the challenging nature of some of those comments. Yep. We have a group of volunteers, sorry, very long lead in. We have a group of volunteers who are helping us to manage those comments because it became unsustainable for one or two people to do that. We've suggested that we might move to sort of an external agency, and we've had an interesting bit of pushback from our senior management team about the use of AI tools and automated tools to reduce the cost and reduce the time implication of community management. And I just wondered if you have any thoughts around that, because our initial gut instinct within the digital team is it can't do the job that we do, but actually probably there are some automations that we probably should go and look and see if we should be doing those to make our jobs easier, but it's not, that human touch is not going to be replaced with AI. But even since we came up with that sort of pushback in our heads, AI seems to have already come on leaps and bounds within the last 2 months. So yeah, I'm really interested in your thought on the balance between AI, human touch, if there are even tools out there that could do anything near what might be needed in relation to the things you've shown in your presentation.
That's a really interesting question, Hannah. I think my gut is saying that at the moment AI cannot do the job of humans. It depends on the kind of comments and conversations you're having. If they're more discussion based and perhaps more, I don't know, there might be like emotionally invested conversations happening, I think the nuance in that needs a human touch. But I'm not saying there isn't a place for AI in community management. We don't use it in that way at the moment because we think social is about human to human. I think people can recognize when it's AI and it's generic. I did just read the Sprout Social Index actually just before this call, and one of the things that it said people want brands to stop doing on social is generic customer care, which I thought was quite interesting. And I know AI can be used a lot for customer care. One of the things they do want brands to start doing is providing fast, personalized customer care. So I guess my answer is I'm not aware of any tools that do this well at the moment. I would perhaps look into or speak to an AI consultant about the possibility for using AI to support with how to respond to different things quickly, perhaps rather than doing it for you. Or, you know, it's about deciding which ones warrant that conversation. Yeah, it's a bit more complex. If you do want to drop us an email, I'd be interested to have another chat with you outside of this because I think that's such a big topic. And maybe I could give you a bit of a better answer there.
Thank you.
I'd also add, so obviously it depends on what the type of messages are that you receive, but if it's a case of wanting to kind of direct people to other information or to different members of the team, project support that they can access, I would recommend setting up an auto reply. So you can do it for Meta, you can do it directly in Business Suite. I'm not 100% sure how you do it in LinkedIn, but I'm pretty sure you can do it in LinkedIn. Just to say, thank you for your message. This is when our DMs are monitored. However, if you need to access this resource, here's the contact information for that. If you need to access this, this is where you go. So you can kind of be that signpost without kind of making people wait for ages for a kind of personalized response. So it's kind of like a in between trying to do everything yourself and doing it using AI.
I hope that was helpful, Hannah.
That was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Does anyone, I'm sorry we've run over a little bit, but if anyone else has any questions, I'm happy to stay and chat for a little bit.
We've got a question in the chat from Saffron who says, I seem to get stage fright when replying to comments. Do you have any tips to get over this?
Oh, Saffron. No, yeah, I can relate to that. I think, I mean, Lucy, you might have some good advice for this as well, having done a lot of community management. I think, Saffron, this maybe is something that people feel when they're publishing content as individuals as well. Do a lot of work with senior leadership teams and posting on LinkedIn, and people do tend to get stage fright because you're putting something out there that's quite personal, and replying to comments, there's some similarities there. And you can just kind of go around in circles and then not publish anything. And the tip I have there is to just try and forget that it's social media and forget for a minute that it's seen by everybody, and think if that person was in front of you and they were making that comment or asking that question, how would you respond as a human being? And if you have integrity in how you'd respond there, then I think the comment that you'd reply to, you should feel good about. I don't know, Lucy, have you got any other tips?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of like a practice thing. The more you do it, the more natural it'll feel and the more comfortable you'll feel. But also, one of the things that I found really useful when I first started doing community management is when we were doing reporting for our clients, we would screenshot kind of like notable interactions and stuff for us to put in our monthly reports, and just looking back through some of the responses that either myself or a colleague made kind of helped me kind of get used to like a particular tone of voice and a particular way of writing that like felt more authentic. So not even just doing it on a daily basis, but also taking time to kind of reflect on it, kind of look at what worked, look at what didn't work, and you kind of naturally build up confidence over time.
And on that as well, just to add to what Lucy said, Saffron, maybe going back to some of your community management opportunities that have already passed and doing some screenshots and kind of then thinking about how you would respond to them, like if you were living in the past, and then finding a colleague whose opinion you trust, who understands what community management is all about and your brand voice, etc., and maybe saying, have you got any feedback on that? And then you either get good feedback or they kind of go like, no, you're smashing it, and then you should maybe feel a bit more confident. Cool. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Apart from maybe we should do 50 minutes for our webinars in future, because I either talk too much or there needs to be a bit more chat. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I had a question because I'm from AfghanAid for context. So we work with communities in Afghanistan. And given that a lot of the situations that we work to tackle are very kind of deep and complex and often very difficult subjects, it can feel really tonally dissonant to sometimes be really like fun and jokey in comments. And we want to make sure we're having those conversations, but in some instances it can feel a bit inappropriate. So I just wanted to kind of know your thoughts on how best for NGOs and kind of organizations like ours to kind of find pathways where they can have those more uplifting conversations, but still kind of be really consistent with their brand identity and their values.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And I've had conversations with some of our clients in the past about this, where you're dealing with very serious issues. And yeah, certainly it's not the place to add humour into any of your kind of content. Again, Lucy, please add your ideas after this. But I think the place where, in my experience, it does feel okay to have a little bit more kind of lightheartedness is when you're doing kind of team or behind the scenes content where it's not making light of a situation because everyone's doing very important work, but it's just showing the human side of people. I can't think of a specific example now, but that for me then doesn't take away from the importance of what you're doing. And obviously any charity is helping people that are vulnerable in some way or another and need help, but the individuals that are doing it can have a bit of fun. It's all very specifically related to the content. And again, Laura, if maybe it'd be nice to have a coffee and a Zoom call another time. We could delve into it a bit more, and I'd happy to share some advice, but I might need to think about that one a little bit longer. Lucy, any ideas?
I would have a look at what the British Red Cross are doing, because they, particularly across LinkedIn and TikTok, have got that balance they've got it down in terms of mixing between that more kind of not necessarily light-hearted, but that more kind of informal, kind of traditionally social content, and the communicating like the very important, very serious campaigns that they're engaged in. So yeah, I'd have a look at them because I think they've got the balance. They're doing it quite well.
And your question has inspired me, Laura, thinking this could be some content that we share as a team that we could do a bit of research on, because I think it's something that would be relevant to a lot of people we work with. So if we get that together soon, we'll share it with you as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any final questions before we wrap it up? No? Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for turning up. And I promised at the beginning it wouldn't overrun, and I lied. And so I'm really sorry about that. I've stolen 10 more minutes of your time. But yeah, I appreciate everyone's interaction, and I hope that this has been useful, and that there's something that you can take away from it for your own socials. Thanks very much. We'll share some links tomorrow with you for the resources. Should I stop recording?
Yeah, do you want me to stop it?
And maybe you do it because it might then go on my laptop.
Okay.